D.B. Cooper, the hijacker who vanished. In November 1971, a man using the name Dan Cooper hijacked a Northwest Orient flight between Portland and Seattle, claimed to have a bomb, and demanded $200,000 in cash along with parachutes. After receiving the ransom in Seattle, he released passengers and ordered the plane into the air again, jumping from the rear stairway into the night over the Pacific Northwest, and was never definitively found. Despite one of the most exhaustive FBI investigations in history, the case remains unsolved. Only some of the ransom money has ever been recovered, leading to endless theories about whether he died in the jump or successfully disappeared. D.B. Cooper's mystery underscores that even in an era of growing federal power and forensic tools, some of the most wanted criminals in U.S. history slip beyond the reach of definitive closure. John Dillinger, public enemy number one. John Dillinger became the face of the gangster era when the FBI labeled him public enemy number one during the Great Depression. He led a bank robbing gang across the Midwest, used military-style tactics, and repeatedly escaped local jails, humiliating law enforcement that was still adapting to multi-state crime. Dillinger's final run ended outside Chicago's Biograph Theater in July 1934 when federal agents shot and killed him after an informant tipped them off about his whereabouts. His case helped push for a stronger, more centralized FBI and new federal laws against interstate bank robbery and flight. Bonnie and Clyde, outlaws turned legends. Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker carried out a string of robberies, car thefts, and killings across Texas, Oklahoma, and surrounding states during the early 1930s. Their mix of violent crime, daring escapes, and staged photos transformed them into folk anti-heroes in newspapers, even as their gang left officers and civilians dead. In May 1934, after months of coordinated tracking, Texas and Louisiana lawmen ambushed their car on a rural road and killed both, ending one of the most romanticized outlaw runs in U.S. history. Their pursuit illustrated the shift from local posse to coordinated multi-state law enforcement operations. Al Capone, organized crime kingpin. Al Capone dominated Chicago's underworld during Prohibition, running bootlegging, gambling, and racketeering operations that made tens of millions of dollars a year. Local police often couldn't make charges stick due to bribery, intimidation, and lack of federal tools to target organized crime leaders who insulated themselves from direct violence. Federal authorities ultimately brought Capone down not for murder or racketeering, but for tax evasion, securing an 11-year sentence in 1931 that broke his grip on Chicago. His case led to stronger federal approaches to financial crime, eventually shaping the way law enforcement targets organized crime through money trails rather than only street-level offenses. Charles Pretty Boy Floyd, the Robin Hood Bandit. Charles Floyd became notorious for bank robberies throughout the Midwest, and some locals viewed him as a Robin Hood figure who allegedly burned mortgage records during heists. He gained national infamy after being named a suspect in the 1933 Kansas City Union Station massacre, where several law enforcement officers were killed, though his exact role remains debated by historians. The FBI put Floyd near the top of its early most wanted priorities, and he was shot and killed in Ohio in October 1934 after a large manhunt involving both local police and federal agents. James Whitey Bulger. James Whitey Bulger led Boston's Winter Hill Gang, overseeing extortion, drug trafficking, and contract killings while simultaneously working as an FBI informant on rival mob families. When federal prosecutors prepared indictments in 1994, Bulger vanished after an apparent tip-off from a corrupt FBI handler, instantly becoming one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. For 16 years, he evaded capture while investigators chased false leads worldwide, until a focused media campaign featuring his longtime girlfriend's photo led to his arrest in Santa Monica in 2011. His case exposed deep corruption within the Boston FBI office, sparked reforms in how informants are handled, and showed how long-term fugitives can still be traced through personal relationships. Ted Bundy, charismatic serial killer. Ted Bundy was a law student and seemingly clean-cut young man who used charm and deception to lure victims across several states in the 1970s. He repeatedly escaped custody, once from a courthouse in Colorado and later from a jail, triggering multi-state manhunts that highlighted security gaps in local detention facilities. Bundy's final crime spree in Florida, including attacks in a university sorority house, led to his capture, conviction, and eventual execution in 1989, after a nationally followed series of trials. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. For nearly 2 decades, an unknown assailant known as the Unabomber mailed or hand-delivered explosive devices targeting universities, airlines, and technology-related individuals. The FBI's investigation became one of the longest and most expensive in its history, relying on forensic linguistics, psychological profiling, and painstaking reconstruction of explosive devices. In 1995, the bomber demanded publication of his manifesto. When newspapers ran it, his brother recognized the writing style and tipped off the FBI, leading to Ted Kaczynski's arrest in a remote Montana cabin in 1996. Pablo Escobar, foreign drug lord, U.S. priority. Although a Colombian citizen, Pablo Escobar was one of the most wanted criminals from a U.S. perspective due to his cartel's massive cocaine shipments into the United States. At his height, Escobar's Medellin cartel controlled much of the global cocaine trade, fueling addiction, violence, and corruption throughout the Americas and generating billions in illicit profits. Escobar's war against the Colombian state, which included bombings, assassinations, and attacks on judges and politicians, turned him into a top target for U.S.-backed Colombian task forces, culminating in his death in 1993 during a rooftop shootout in Medellin. Osama bin Laden, architect of 9/11. Osama bin Laden, founder of al-Qaeda, orchestrated a series of attacks on U.S. interests, culminating in the September 11, 2001 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. Even before 9/11, bin Laden was on America's radar for the 1998 U.S. embassy bombings in East Africa and the 2000 USS Cole bombing, but the scale of 9/11 made him the most wanted person in modern U.S. history. For a decade, the U.S. dedicated enormous intelligence and military resources to hunting him, following trails through Afghanistan and Pakistan, interrogating captured operatives, and tracking courier networks. In May 2011, U.S. Special Operations Forces located and killed bin Laden in Abbottabad, Pakistan, bringing the longest and most politically consequential manhunt in U.S. history to a dramatic end. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, Tunnel King of the Cartels. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman rose from modest beginnings to lead Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, a major supplier of heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl into the United States. His cartel used sophisticated smuggling tunnels under the U.S.-Mexico border, semi-submersibles, and hidden compartments in vehicles, making him a prime target for U.S. drug enforcement and intelligence agencies. El Chapo became infamous for spectacular escapes, including a 2015 breakout through a mile-long tunnel dug into his prison cell in Mexico, reinforcing his status as a legendary fugitive. He was finally extradited to the United States in 2017, convicted in federal court, and sentenced to life in a supermax prison, symbolizing a rare full victory against a top-tier cartel leader.